Part 3, Realm and Commonwealth by Spiers. Copyright 2018. The Royal Standard or Ensign of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland forms the visual distinction of authority for the realm. At times of warfare, the realm stands hard, separate and wholly to an enemy or ally. You will see this Royal Standard depicted on many buildings of Queen Victoria's legacy throughout Australia, including courthouses and government buildings no longer operating under the authority issued from this core this standard represents. The Commonwealth of Australia became the birthright by inheritance of the wealth common to all those with a beneficial interest in that estate. What this meant was that the children of the Anzac that fought and died to defend the realm so that the Commonwealth of Australia could exist, did so that you, the sons and daughters of that Commonwealth, could benefit as beneficiaries to a greater trust that was left for you by your forefathers who attempted to create something so you did not have to play the games of warfare that were going on in the motherland. The Act of Settlement details this fact, that it is the birthright handed down along with the laws of England. This is a very key fact, that in those laws, the framework for the Commonwealth of Australia was born from the authorised King James Bible as a Christian Commonwealth. J. Dower spoke of this at the creation of the Commonwealth, stating, "The Commonwealth of Australia will be, from its first stage, a Christian Commonwealth, and as described above by Quick and Garran, as detailed in the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act July 1900 UK/PGA, comes under the blessing of Almighty God." Sir Henry Parkes, known as the father of Australia's federation, believed that Christianity comprised an essential part of Australia's common law. In a column published in the Sydney Morning Herald, 26 August 1885, Sir Henry stated, "We are preeminently a Christian people, as our laws, our whole system of jurisprudence, our constitution, are based upon and interwoven with our Christian belief. We start to piece together quite a few important facts. The Commonwealth of Australia is a union of men, not states. It was men that voted, it was men that united, and it was men that defended what they had created. This gave them a self-determination on a world scale as a Christian Commonwealth of Australia, with its Anglican Church of Australia at the core of its faith, being born from the mother in the Church of England, becoming a sister church of the faith. It was men that became the beneficiaries of what they created and created that birthright for their kin. Here is the Royal Standard or Ensign can be seen to reflect the core of authority in the Commonwealth of Australia. It is displayed on the coats of arms atop Old Parliament House, which opened in May 1927. It represents the realm in which the Commonwealth of Australia as an entity has its foundations. Here the Royal Standard or Ensign can be seen to reflect the core of authority in the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia, featuring on the coat of arms of the first Government Gazette issued after the first sitting of the Parliament in Melbourne, Victoria. The laws of England, through the blessing of Almighty God, became the faith of this Commonwealth of Australia, being the authorised King James Bible, a foundation stone for the Commonwealth of Australia to exist, a realm in which became a way of life for your children and their children. Along with this came a package of predetermined acts of the United Kingdom Parliament, some even preceding the War of the Roses and the Union of the Crowns, leading to the realm in which the Commonwealth of Australia rests its authority. Some of these laws you are familiar with and have attempted to quote, including but not limited to the Magna Carta or Great Charter, Habeas Corpus and the Bill of Rights, 1688. But also others you may not be familiar with, such as 2 Henry 25c2, which created the Church of England and separated the Kingdom of England from the realms of the Roman Empire. This leads us to cases of treachery, treason and chivalry for acts of warfare under coats of armed foreign or actions against the realm. For it is not actions against the Commonwealth that have led us down this path. It is actions of a king as head of an entire imperial realm. Treason becomes relative when you speak of a realm and an oath of allegiance, and the changing of any allegiances to those realms. Treason takes on many forms, some subtle, others grossly apparent. What we see generally is a concentration on the Commonwealth of Australia and not the realm that gave it the foundations on solid rock, instead of the sands of time wherein it can only be heard in the winds of time. Before we look further into what this all means for the realm and how changes occurred that would affect over 50 countries throughout an empire, let us have a look at how the Commonwealth of Australia represented itself on the world stage relative to the realm in which it was first created. The Commonwealth of Australia, and now the Australian government, has used several coat of arms to signify the authority of that government. Before 1905, the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia signified its authority under the coat of arms of the realm, the Royal Arms. This can be directly shown in the following correspondence, wherein the Prime Minister's office makes requests through the Home Office in Westminster for the Lords of Arms to create and issue coats of arms for use by the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia relative to property and authority issued by that Parliament. Correspondence back and forth with the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland saw the first coat of arms of the Commonwealth of Australia introduced in Royal Warrant as at 1908, although in letter from the Home Office can demonstrate warrant had already taken place after requests to London in December of 1905, and correspondence January of 1906 detailed its heraldic arms. We can see at the head of the first page the coat of arms of the realm is clearly displayed above the words Commonwealth of Australia. We can see by way of this correspondence that, firstly, it is headed with the title Commonwealth of Australia under the coat of arms of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. It forms its authority under the blessing of Almighty God via the realm vested inside the monarch of the time, being Queen Victoria, her heirs and successors. George V then later issues royal warrant declaring that the new arms will be used in lieu and instead of the former arms, stating, "Now know ye that we of the princely grace and special favour have granted and assigned and do by these present grants and assign for the Commonwealth of Australia the armorial ensigns following, that is to say." It is to be noted that the imperial crown features in said arms relative to the imperial crown displayed on the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia pictured earlier, and also under King George V. It is evident to the state that the coat of arms in use above the Old Parliament House, along with the royal arms also featured above Old Parliament House, that at the creation of the Commonwealth of Australia and the first 10 years post-constituting on the 1st of January 1901, that King Edward VII and King George V issued arms accordingly and displayed them in front of all the people. If you look at the door handles of Old Parliament House, it is again confirmed that the two coats of arms go hand in hand. What is evident from the correspondence and associated letters, patents, for both arms issued is that requests have gone to the College of Arms, to the Herald of Arms according to the Law of Arms. This put coats of arms used within the Commonwealth of Australia under the jurisdictions of the heralds at the College of Arms and the Court of Chivalry or Court of Constable and Marshal. This is very important to note when considering a court case held in the Court of Chivalry in 1954 covering the use of arms by a culprit entity. The official coat of arms atop Old Parliament House can now be defined as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, Commonwealth of Australia, and as of September 1912 by royal warrants of 2 coats of arms and royal styles and titles of Queen Victoria 1837. We established the de jure authority from which the Commonwealth of Australia found its foundations. It is further evident, when looking through newspaper clippings, that the process of approval by the College of the Heralds had taken place, and the arms were detailed in media press releases. It is evident to note that in the Sydney Morning Herald on Friday, the 29th of October 1926, readers report use of the coat of arms proper in the Illustrated Australian Encyclopedia having its wattling missing, only to report that the publication had given reasoning that the wattling was not part of the official royal warrant issuing the arms. This can be noted by reading the proclamation of the royal warrant above. It can be further noted that after the issuance of the first coat of arms under Edward VII, the Scottish Patriotic Association made complaint that the arms did not initially contain the St. George Cross, and had not contained either the Scottish St. Andrew's Cross or the Irish Cross. The association bid the media to convey their wish for the Lord Lions of Scotland and the Ulster King of Arms to have input into the created coat of arms. This is important because the arms were issued by the King of Arms at the College of Arms in England. And as already noted, the Act of Settlement 1700 passed into the Commonwealth of Australia under High Court Rules Section 5A, wherein it states that a law valid to England at the time of the Constitution is a law valid in the Commonwealth of Australia. This puts the birthright of the Commonwealth of Australia by inheritance in the realm of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and brings the authorised King James Bible forward as the core faith, being the laws of England. From the mother a son is born. One cannot be sure of the royal warrant provided, nor can one be sure of the correspondence provided in issuance of the coat of arms, both the 1908 and 1912 versions. When we consider Hague Conventions being installed across the realm in 1907, reaching into the Commonwealth of Australia in January 1910, how are we to determine what is a lawful display of authority when during Anzac Day Parade in 2005, this photo of the Royal Australian Navy band leader was taken displaying said coat of arms with a 6-pointed star located above the torso on full display at Anzac Day in Sydney, Australia in 2005. We can see by this Sunday School certificate to the Young Australian Temperance League, the flag features a 6-pointed star, and the coat of arms, which we have seen issued with royal warrant detailing 7-pointed star, although here displaying with 6-pointed star. As we progress, we look into the flags of the Commonwealth of Australia under the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, which is a slightly differing timeline display, the same sorts of discrepancies. We have a mix of royal arms taking place, a mix of coats of arms taking place, and as will be demonstrated, a mix of flags also taking place. Something is not correct of the line of authority for the Commonwealth of Australia. If we also take into consideration that the Royal Australian Navy in 2005 is displaying the same coat of arms with a 6-pointed star and not a 7-pointed star, and does not feature an imperial crown but instead a St. Edward's crown, something in relation to this coat of arms might be amiss. If we also consider the change of the Royal Australian Naval Ensign in 1967 in accordance with the Flags Act 1953, and changes by Admiralty order to the current design in 1908, we can start to see not is all as it seems. If we turn to the money issued and look at the use of the coat of arms on the florin and compare it to the 50-cent round and the current issued edged 50-cent, we see a crowned estate on the florin, the same issued coat of arms displaying the imperial crown above it. When the Currency Act 1965 is passed and the silver content taken out of the coinage, the 50-cent round features the 7-pointed star on the torso. This design is then carried on into the edged 50-cent piece we know today. If we take into consideration that the Currency Act 1965 affected this change, and the lack of gold and silver in the realm to cover reparations left over from 2 world wars, we might think that the Crown estate was in demise and now under the authority not of the Imperial Crown. However, here we have an Imperial Crown being replaced by a 7-pointed star on the florin turned 50 cent in a Currency Act 1965 that is followed by a new currency in the Australian dollar at 2-to-1 value, as detailed in the schedule of the Currency Act 1965. We start to piece together that much more is going on than just meets the eye. This is only something that the Earl Marshal can provide an answer to. Might it be relevant to ensure that he gets a chance to review the records of the coats of arms by making application to the Earl Marshal to open the Court of Chivalry for case to be heard relevant to the use of the coat of arms issued to the Commonwealth of Australia, as well as to provide definitive record of their registrations within the College of Arms. Stranger again is the registration of coat of arms in WIPO, which looks after the rights of intellectual property, such as trademarks and copyrights. Here you can see registration with full colour and wattling as per accepted usage. This also gives rise to what the Australian Government calls a stylised arms, displaying 2 wattle branches and is usually presented in 2-tone black and white, or white on a background colour. No royal warrant can be found allowing the change to be a stylised version, and as can be demonstrated by royal warrant, is required to be in accordance with the law of arms under the College of Arms. Although the wattling, as already used, could be seen as stylised, although accepted, being featured on the royal carriage. We also find the coat of arms registered in the US Patent Office, as well as the Trademarks Register of the US Trademark Office, and the links with the United States Security Exchange Commission and the Australian Securities Investment Commission via a Memorandum of Understanding. And within the Commonwealth of Australia, also find that all Australian government agents are registered with Australian business numbers within the body of ASIC, which itself has been issued with an ABN. Some of these are no longer departments of the government and merely corporate agents outsourced by government. Use of an ABN to conduct business by a Commonwealth of Australian Government Department under Commonwealth of Australian Constitution Act July 1900 UK/PGA, now performing corporate activities under coat of arms issued by the College of Arms. An interesting case appeared in 1975 when linen merchant Dennis Papillon of St Albans, Hertfordshire, decided he would produce souvenir bedspreads for the Scottish soccer team's fans when it had entered the World Cup in 1978. The manufacturer was informed by the College of Arms that the highest penalty for usurpation of a royal arms was hanging or beheading. The manufacturer was assured this would not be the case and instead was ordered to pay recompense for the use of arms. This fell under the jurisdiction of the Lord Lines of Scotland, heralds of the Kingdom of Scotland, in union with England. The College of Arms in England, through the Court of Chivalry, also adheres to strict observance over the use of arms, as can be demonstrated by 1954 case in the Court of Chivalry over the usurpation of arms by a corporate entity and ordering the removal of the arms. This would bring into question many a building in Australia that has the coat of arms still on display, yet it is not being presented by members of the realm, and, in many cases, being used in a commercial capacity, such as the coat of arms on display out the front of Cairns' old courthouse building, which has now become a pub and bar. Would this even apply to the Victorian Police operating in commercial activity under the Australian business numbers? Separated non-departmental structures, such as the South Melbourne, where the police station itself being a former colonial courthouse, displays the royal arms above the doors. These are only questions that the Earl Marshal can answer specifically. Crimes Act 1914, Section 68. Forging official marks. Any person who, without lawful authority, proof whereof shall lie upon him, and where intent to deceive, makes any mark resembling or apparently intended to resemble or pass for any authorised official stamp or mark of any department of the Commonwealth or of any public authority under the Commonwealth, shall be guilty of an offence. Penalty: imprisonment for 2 years. Throughout this paper so far, we have demonstrated the background to the realm, defining its royal standard or ensign, including coat of arms, and use of, along with the creation of coat of arms of the Commonwealth of Australia. We can divine the core lineage of authority that sees colonial settlement turned into self-governing bodies in the 1850s. New South Wales fractured into colonies that became the states, with South Australia taking governance over wastelands now considered to be the Northern Territory by state self-governance. One should be able to define the royal ensign or standard of the realm of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, as well as recognise its coat of arms and comprehend the law of arms is held in courts of chivalry, where losing one's head is literally a possibility. We've demonstrated that coat of arms are very serious business, having courts of chivalry that still deal with the usurpation of arms as a very serious matter. If one were to walk into a New South Wales courtroom, you may have noticed the royal arms on the wall behind the magistrate. We have already demonstrated through a trial of evidence the realm and its signifying royal standard, but now we have discretion. Something is amiss. There are a few courthouses in Australia, Forbes in New South Wales, being a uniquely preserved town, still has the royal arms above the doorway, although displays of different realms' authority inside the building. I have noticed this at the Supreme Court libraries in Victoria as well. It was flags that brought this to my attention, going through the changes to the flag of the Commonwealth of Australia, through changes in 1903, 1908, and finally in 1953, wherein we are left with the flag we have today. Stepping back through this progression and taking note of the changes that have occurred, it became apparent that something was going on that was impacting on this Commonwealth of Australia. We have a slightly different coat of arms that is made to look like the former, but is different in quite a few ways. Strange is the paw of the lion leaning over the hide of location of what should be an angel with back-sweeping wings. Looking around, it is pretty easy to see where this royal standard is being flown, and usually with the associated regalia surrounding its appearance. Here you can see a Land Rover taking part in Queen Elizabeth II's motorcade, displaying a royal standard or ensign of arms different to the realm in which the Commonwealth of Australia was formed. This now reveals without doubt that two kingdoms are displaying authority separate of each other. The first linked to Queen Victoria and George I before her, mentioning minor changes. A second kingdom displaying very similar arms with a large difference in the harp in the third quarter, it lacking the display of any angel, instead displaying a lip reminiscent of a Venus flytrap. Earlier in this paper we displayed the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia, as well as the Great Seal of Transvaal, both displaying the royal arms of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, headed by imperial crown, and very similar in design to each other, given they are former colonies across the seas. We are able to match the displayed arms to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, although we'll go through some similar discrepancies in relation to the display of arms that may have confusion in meaning and or designed to look similar so as to confuse or obfuscate the general public. These are matters for the Earl Marshal to discover and report on, as the general populace and in many ways myself, are not qualified per se to come to any definitive conclusion other than to pose a possible misuse and or crime. The concern of this paper is to pose evidence of a nature to attempt to comprehend its meaning on a world scale. We know that we are speaking of the United Kingdom, and we know from the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, July 1900 UK/PGA, that the United Kingdom can be defined as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. This is backed up by definition in the Acts Interpretation Act 1966. This is an important year, as is when the Acts Interpretation Act 1973 made changes to the definitions of the Commonwealth of Australia. Many are familiar with changes that occurred within the period of the Whitlam administration, with his long "May you say, God save the Queen" speech in front of the full media. But many fail to grasp what Gough Whitlam was actually attempting to do. Let us not, however, get outside of the discussion of this paper. The Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia has released by Gazette since its first sitting every matter that has been put before the Parliament. For the most part, not much in this process has changed over time. However, going through government gazettes in the Supreme Court Library of Victoria, doing some research, followed the use of arms within the gazettes. The first change being very minor on the 7th of May 1925, addition of a chain to the unicorn, as well as crowned land form on top. The shape of the shield is also different. The second change here being very different. It now has its supporters standing on ground, centred by an imperial crown. The line now displaying a leopard form, with bear-like claws. The shield now displays a harp in the third quarter, lacking any angel form, instead being straight-edged curve. The change that follows and leads to its use in this form and slowly into what the Australian government call a stylised form is the coat of arms issued in 1912, including wattling, of which does not appear in the Royal Warrant. This wattling has been used on the Queen's horse carriage as well as on the Royal Naval sashes, so seems an accepted stylisation. Would this liberty to change an arms issued seem relevant to further change to the coat of arms displayed by linking wattle branches in wreath-looking form? Is there even liberty to change an arms presentation given its issue from a higher authority?